I'll be talking about Memsource Translate, which is one of our product dedicated specifically to machine translation. TransLink obviously is using many technologies. One of them is Memsource. So this is just to give you a bit more insight on what with what TransLink is working on a backend when they're trying to accommodate customers, and also give you a bit more understanding how exactly easy using machine translation could be. Memsource Translate itself is just an empty hub that you might be familiar with from the current landscape. The goal is to enable usage of machine translation, not only to advanced users, which is, for example, TransLink. TransLink is training their own engine, so they have a lot of knowledge here how to work with MT for their customers and with their linguists. But Memsource Translate is also a viable, very good solution for beginners. That's actually the main target of this service. In this landscape, as Mikhail already said, it's changing rapidly. And if you really want, or if you're trying to get into it, it seems just, you can't grasp it, right? If you don't have any knowledge about MT, if you didn't read up all the articles, starting with MT seems impossible. You have so many MT engines to choose from. That's the first step. You have to then try to test them somehow. You have to figure out, okay, for what content do I want to use the MT engines, for what I don't want to, because I just want to translate it from scratch, deliver super high quality that the customer requires. They don't want any MT post-editing at all. So the landscape is very difficult, and how to navigate it, right? So Memsource Translate is an MT hub that will pick the best performing engine for you out of some, you know, some MT engines that are supported there. And the goal is that the user doesn't have to do much there, and they will still get the MT quality they're looking for out of the whole process. So TransLink here could benefit out of these features, but obviously they're applying the technology they want to. In some cases, they're doing something extra on top of what Memsource Translate provides, especially training the engines and follow-upping up on the quality that the engines are delivering. So the main, obviously the main aspect here is what engines do you work with? Memsource supports around 35, I think 36 MT engines now. Some of them you are able to use under Memsource Translate. So from these, Memsource Translate is picking the best performing one. It's again an easy plugin solution for your content. You don't have to think about much. You will allow the feature for pre-translation and it's gonna run its course. You don't have to limit yourself to these 4 engines that I'm displaying right here. Those are just those that you don't even have to you know, worry yourself about MT consumption, character consumption, but you can also add additional engines under Memsource Translate. So the main feature of Memsource Translate is the auto select of the engine, which I was talking about at the end. That's the AI feature, the AI fancy word that everybody's talking about. I won't be talking because it's not my focus. It's not my career goal to be an AI engineer. So don't expect any technical descriptions from me. There are much more suited speakers today that will probably talk about it more. in the end, I'm responsible for customers, and for them, this solution has to be seamless. They shouldn't do much here. So the empty auto select again is a machine learning algorithm on the backend that is able to recognize the domain of the document that you import into Memsource, and also obviously the language combination, and then suggest the best performing engine for that. Imagine that you're importing a job that has 20 target languages, and Memsource Translate will suggest different engines for every language based on its experience, and also based on the domain that it recognizes based on the import. So that's the main feature. Subsequent feature is a quality estimation. Memsource Translate is also able to evaluate the segment level of the empty output and give it a score, very similar to what you are already familiar with classic translation memory fuzzies. The same applies here. Then to the linguist, it's displayed in the editor, so they can work with this information on their own as well. They can see what they should spend time on post-editing and on what not. So this should make their life slightly easier, slightly faster when they're going through what needs to be post-edited. For the end client and for the translation agency, it brings the value that you're able to know at the beginning what the quality of the empty output is going to be. If that content requires the empty pre-translation at all, should we apply empty to this specific content? And it also gives you an idea of what effort the translators will have to go through post-editing that empty output in there. So this is again something that is able to give you a bit more insight at the beginning. If you especially combine it with some evaluation at the end of the post-editing, you're able to recognize the performance of the empty engine even further. You're able to create your own baseline and then run it against that. That would be this one. Again, the hot topic that is probably currently running under the MT discussion are glossaries, how we should apply terminology to the MT output as well. Multiple engines support this functionality already, like Amazon, Google, DeepL. So what it does basically is that it's a simple search and replace. It selects the terms and apply them in the empty output. Some MT engines have it a bit more sophisticated than just search and replace, but in general, it's just that. So what would you use that glossary for? It should be much more simple terms that you would have in your term base, for example. So some cleaning of that terminology coming from the glossary, from the term base, sorry, coming from the term base has to be done. You have to adjust the term base that you have so it can work as a glossary under empty engine. So just some product names, simple terms, 1 word, 2 words maximum are best to use here. Then you cannot expect the quality output from this functionality. But in the end, obviously, this is something that you can again adopt and improve the MT output and quality there. Then obviously for customers, so in the end, Memsource Translate gives you the empty engine that is suitable for your content. It gives you the evaluation of the quality and effort you have to put into the post-editing. And it also gives you in the end the quality that you expect and ways how to measure that quality through post-editing analysis, for example. If customers are more data-driven, more experienced in EMT, they want to have a bit more insight into what's actually happening, especially if they want to train their own custom engines, as TransLink is doing. So for that, they want to have more granularity on the data, on what's happening on the back end. What's Memsource Translate actually doing. So we also have that insight, access to different scoring measures for the output, which you can then use to backtrack what was happening and how the MT engine, just the generic one, perform, and recognize if that engine then should be displaced with a custom engine. So in the end, you have a very good overview of what's happening in your MT workflows. If the generic MT engines are performing well enough, you don't have to invest into custom. And if they're not performing well enough, you can apply custom engine. And then Memsource will still learn even how that custom engine performs, and is gonna pick and compare them as you're running your processes. What future brings is obviously the customization of the MT engine is still a #1 topic. Again, how to make it much more seamless, much more easy for the end user is to enable, make the training of the custom engine much more seamless, much more easier. So we want to make this happen almost automatically without even human intervention, or maybe just by setting up some triggers which will allow for the training. Okay, I have enough segments in this translation memory that I can train the engine. Should be there a notification? Should this be done automatically? Should the engines be retrained automatically? So that's the next, that's the future that we're looking at with the next improvements. Ideally, everything just comes maybe by clicking a button, and automatically the translation memories will be cleaned, will be sent for the training to providers that you will choose. And when the engine training is done, they will be automatically applied to the projects that you already have this MT custom engine selected. So that would be the ideal end result that we're looking at, let's say, start of the next year. So in the end, you shouldn't, as an end user, and here TransLink that is supporting this service to its customers, they can just apply Memsource Translate on certain projects where the quality is good enough with the stock, with the generic engines, and they can recognize, okay, for this customer in this domain, it doesn't work. We should custom train engine for them and apply it there. So in the end, the process on the TransLink side should be much more smoother, so they can dedicate the resources and the time to other things, to the custom training, to more specified workflows, to more conversation with customers. So that's the way or view from the TransLink perspective here. And because I should keep 10 minutes for the Q&A, that's where we are at.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Ondrej, for the presentation. The first would be there's a technical question that came from YouTube. We have a YouTube trend. What is it called? We have a whatever. So we have the YouTube version of the webinar. So for the people asking on YouTube, are we going to have translation into Russian? We do have translation into Russian. It is on Zoom. We have a direct Zoom link, and if you participate via Zoom, you will have two versions, whether it's you will have the Russian version and the English version of our webinar. So you need to participate through the direct Zoom link, not on YouTube. And I have a question, actually.
Shoot.
So as of now, we have the interface with empty engines, right? And we have with empty engines on your Memsource page, and then we have our own interface on the page of the engine on their side, with which we into which we add our corpora, we add our corpus, or the text on which we train the engine, we add our glossaries, whatever. And are you now thinking, is it possible, will it be implemented in the future that we can do it all in the interface of Memsource, not jumping into another interface? Yeah. While absolutely being friendly and everything, but it would still be great to work in one window.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, absolutely. This is, it's a much more complex topic. It's a discussion with the MT providers. The MT engines also have to be technically viable to do all the operations that we expect from there, again, for the end user, for TransLink and for their customers, to don't get into any issues that the MT engine is slow with filling in the target, for example, right? So there's different aspects so we can achieve this, but in the end, yes, you know it yourself. I know that you're asking for the audience, but those 4 engines there are already managed through Memsource, so you don't have to manage the MT engine outside Memsource. Again, for TransLink, this means, okay, nobody internal has to spend time on creating MT engine profiles somewhere else. It can be done in Memsource. I can spend time on something different, on something that is more quality driven. But in the future, hopefully, as the MT training again for the custom engine, in your case, right, that would be done through the interface again. You wouldn't have to go outside. This doesn't mean that you're not using the MT engine provider at the end. You're very much using their services because they're specialists in the processing of the training, right? But Memsource would allow to remove some of those steps that you have to do on your side, not only the management, let's say, of the operations, but some operations that you have to do manually now as well. For example, the translation memory cleaning.
And then there's a question from the listeners. So Margaret is asking, what is the number or the minimum number of documents on which Memsource Translate should be trained to have an adequate choose of the engine for the project?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, the algorithm is trained on the entire customer data. That's how we are able to get much more quality features out of them. It can very easily happen then on some specific documents this won't work. This might be too generic, but then again, that's the space where you should invest into custom training. But in general, the auto select algorithm has different parts of it, but in general, I think it's 30 documents that you have to put inside, run through Memsource Translate, and then the engine is able to suggest based on the domain and the language combination. Something else?
Again, yeah, well, yes, there's another question from her, and it's in Russian again. What is MTQE based on when it has a prediction of how much work should post editor do?
Yeah.
What is it based on? Is it based on some already translated documents?
Yes, it's trained on post-editing effort. So again, we know that, for example, this segment, after it was pre-translated from MT, wasn't post-edited at all. so it should be a good match. Then this empty output was heavily post-edited, and that's just to simplify. The AI team has different measures how to catch some anomalies, and they're trying to flatten the curve so it works for all the content, obviously. So but in a simplified version, it's taking into the effort the post editor's work, so it can display a score the next time.
Right. As far as I remember, a few years ago when we were in the Pekin hotel back in Moscow, we talked about this actually, and maybe there's a few seconds. One of the I'm just reading the questions. One of the algorithms would be translating that same thing with different engines and then looking at them and comparing them. Yeah. And so, yeah, so you understand whether it's correct or not by what other variants are.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the complexity of that is much more. It's for a different webinar, I think. It's more of a really heavy AI stuff, machine learning that you have to do, how to set up the rules for the algorithm. The algorithm is not working only with the post editing. There are different aspects to it, so it makes sense in the end. Cleaning of some data as well. The same thing that is happening in the end with the training of a custom engine.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like maybe the message here is if you don't have to go into custom training that you see that Memsource Translate is not working with you, you don't have to think about these things. You shouldn't think about these things. It's the same with your mobile phone. You don't have to know how exactly is picking you the best restaurant around the corner for you. You're the user in the end, and if it works for you, it's good. But you need to be able. But in the same time, Memsource should give you the information. You should see the information that it's not working. Then you need to change the process.
Yeah, and there's another question: what systems will be available for customization through empty engine customization?
What systems, like empty engines?
As far as I understand, yeah.
Well, right now we have it for Microsoft, Google, and I'm forgetting somebody for sure, Systran, and we would like to have more for sure in the future. Yeah.
Okay. So Ondrej, yeah, thank you very much for this presentation. Yeah, been fine. Absolutely, well, interesting for us at least. As your partner and the provider of this technology of yours. So thank you for the participation, and hopefully you stay with us till the end, listening to the other reports.